Welcome to Dear Tay, You Got This. This podcast is a weekly motivational love letter to those who are looking for a change, are currently going through a change, and they need just a little pick-me-up. Tay is a transformation and spiritual coach and author who understands that one small habit over 1 year can create a lifetime of growth. First, we will talk about our topic, and at the end of each episode, I will do a trinity. The trinity is a brag, gratitude, and desire. If you'd like to share your wins, questions, and trinity, please call or text 330-552-7234 to be featured on the podcast. I love hearing about your success and how you are transforming. To learn more about your host, visit her Instagram page, Phoenix of Change. In April of 2023, I found a certification program called Mental Health First Aid. As a coach, I felt that it was important for me to learn ways to talk to people, especially if they are experiencing a mental health crisis. Working with people going through trauma could be a daily occurrence, and I wanted to be prepared. During the next couple of months, I will be doing a self-care series. I will be talking about the different types of self-care and how I use them during my first year of consistent healing practices. Note that your experience may be different and that I was not actively using these techniques at the beginning, but they grew into my life. Self-care is all about putting your oxygen mask on first to be able to help others. Self-care are the activities and practices that you engage in to help reduce stress and maintain your health and well-being. It is meant to refuel you, not deplete you. The areas of self-care that can help your overall well-being include intellectual, emotional, environmental, physical, spiritual, financial, community, and occupational. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Dear Tay, You Got This. I'm Tay, and this podcast is a motivational love letter to anybody who is going through a healing journey, wanting to start a healing journey, want to grow, transform their lives into something completely different than what it is right now. I am super excited to get to our next self-care topic. And it's interesting because we're almost done with the self-care series. And I feel like already over the course of these last 12 episodes are now the last 10 episodes of each month that I've done, you guys have learned something new and you've learned how to put into place these different types of self-care methods. And I'm excited to continue to get to the final month. But until then, we are in November. And I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about some of the things that happened in November. And then the two self-care topics that we're going to talk about are emotional and intellectual, which seem to hit home during the month of November. So in November, one of the things that I did was I took a break and recalibrated my heart and my mind and also my purpose. I decided to learn new skills that would help me grow in my business. And I made a decision to live my life for myself and for no one else. And I decided that I wasn't going to force any more situations or decisions. And of course, that was a big thing considering that in October, I told you guys that I got super duper anxious about life and I was just ready to go. I was ready to make all these changes. And then I forced a situation and it fell apart. So I had to sit back and I had to rethink about my life. And trust me, these things happen very often. I can tell you that in March, when I had decided that I was going to break up with my ex, I was literally questioning myself and whether or not I should do it. And that's going to happen. Sometimes we don't know if the decision that we're making is the right decision. But one of the things that we have to do is we have to check our emotions at the door. And we have to think about what it is that we want and whether or not the things that we are doing fits that purpose or fits that mission. And that was one of the things that I can definitely say, that in that particular situation, that relationship was not fitting my purpose. It was not fitting my mission. So what I want to do is I want to talk about the emotional pieces that I have decided and how those things looked when it came to like a mental burnout or like an emotional burnout and a physical burnout. And the reason why I'm going to put these two in place is because I have noticed over the last couple of years that I can definitely tell when I'm getting run down to the point where I don't want to do absolutely anything. And when that happens, I kind of just like sit in the corner and I don't talk to anybody. I'm kind of just like to myself. And one of the reasons why I'm going to go over this in the November self-care portion is because I want you guys to realize that there are different types of there are different types of burnout. And there are different things that you can do for each type of these burnouts. Okay? So one of the things that I did was deciding that my life was mine and mine alone. So I have been going through this really big change. I had been changing things. I had been thinking about my life, and I had been really looking at what it is that I wanted to change. And then as soon as an opportunity came for me to manipulate a situation, I took it. And it was a very, very good example of why they say sit, be still, and wait. And not all the time in every situation are you going to know exactly what that is. And for me, I was looking at the potential of what that situation looked like. I wasn't even thinking about what I wanted in that moment. I was thinking about how I could fit into this other person's life. And when you're going through your life and you're going through your healing journey and things like that, like that is the wrong way to go about it. Like I tell people all the time, when you're on this healing journey, you want to be able to heal for yourself. If you're healing for somebody else, I'm going to tell you it's not going to stick. They tell you this often, like if you're an alcoholic and somebody in your family wants you to quit and you decide to quit for them, you might quit for a little while. But it's quite popular for that person to go back to drinking. I'll give you an example. So my dad actually recently told me a story. When I stopped drinking last year, I went over to my dad's house one time and he had stopped drinking. And I think that was at the beginning of this year. He took like a couple of months off. And maybe it wasn't this year. I can't remember at this point. I think it might have been in 2023. It was either 2023 or the beginning of 2024. He decided to take a couple of months and not drink. And I remember going over to his house when he wasn't drinking and we were talking about it and he was just like, this is so boring. And I was like, well, why did you stop drinking? He was like, yeah, I just needed a break. So I decided that I just wasn't going to drink for a couple of months. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I thought it was neat because I was like, well, that's awesome. Like, I'm glad that you decided that. Now, he was telling me a story later on about how when he was married to my mom, he drank a lot and she wanted him to stop drinking. So he said that he had stopped drinking for a bit. I think he said he might have went to some meetings. But like, again, it didn't stick. He had told me that a friend of his, and this was years later, when we were older, and he was like, a friend of his thought that he drank too much and wanted him to go to AA meetings with him. So he went just as a support for this guy, but he never went for himself. And he was like, I can stop drinking whatever I want. And I thought that was so great because my thing for me when I stopped drinking was It was more so like, what is it that I want to accomplish that drinking is not allowing me to accomplish? And one of those things that I realized, it was more of me thinking for myself and me living my life to my fullest extent. And I always tell people, like, if you don't want to stop drinking, you don't have to. That's not something that you have to do. But if you want to make a change in your life and you're like, okay, well, I need to stop smoking or I need to exercise more, then make a conscious decision and a choice on your own to do it. Just because you go to the hospital and go to your primary care doctor and they say, oh, you need to be walking more, you need to eat healthier because you have high cholesterol, I can guarantee you that some of those people are not going to do it. And it's just because they are comfortable with where they are. Changing takes a lot of work. And when I decided that my life was mine, I realized that I was making a lot of decisions based off of other people, what they wanted in their lives. And I felt like I could just fit right into their mold. And that's why the forcing situations didn't work, because I was forcing myself into a space where I didn't belong. So when it came down to it, I decided that I need to take a break and I need to recalibrate. And one of those things was I needed to take a mental break and I also needed to take an emotional break. Because where I was at emotionally, I was, again, trying to force these relationships that probably didn't need to happen, or at least happened in the way that I was trying to make them happen. So I knew that I really needed to, like, pump the brakes, right? Now, one of the things that I realized for myself was that when I started moving these unnecessary pieces in my life, it left me exhausted. It left me mentally exhausted. Because now I was putting in more work into an area of my life that probably didn't need it at that moment. Just imagine if you decided that you were just going to go ahead and start swimming, but you didn't know how to swim. But you just decided you're going to go jump into the pool. What's going to happen? It is most likely that you're going to be able to get yourself afloat, or that you're going to be able to tread water for a little while. But because you don't have the tools, you don't have the buildup of the muscles to be able to keep yourself up for that long, your muscles start to get exhausted and you start to feel yourself sinking. Okay? That's kind of what happened when I decided that I was going to force the situation. Even though I knew it was wrong, I did it anyway. I know. But at the same time, how else could I learn from it? Now, what I also realized too was that not only by doing this, but because I had been growing so much and so fast, I started to really understand what burnout looked like to me. And it wasn't just within like my work or within like my personal life or anything like that. It was literally just like I felt so exhausted. I honestly didn't know what I should do. So one of the things at the end of last year that I did was I literally stopped and I took a break from literally everything. So what mental burnout looks like is it looks like exhaustion. You can't think or feel, like you can't put thoughts into a task or an activity or anything. So I remember when I was mentally burnt out, I was working for a law firm where I was doing workers' comp. And I remember going into work one day and I was just like, all right, I'm good. Like things are going all right. I was going through a lot. I wasn't really getting paid that much money, like for what I could do in this particular position. I had been there for, I think at this point I had been there for like 3 months, 4 months, and COVID had just hit. So I was very much exhausted. because all I did was like, I worked and I worked and I worked, and we were trying to figure out, we didn't know what was going to happen with the courts. We didn't know what was going to happen with our cases. So we were just like, all right, let's go ahead and bang out all of this work. So within a 3-month period, I had worked so many goddamn hours that I was just mentally exhausted. And I remember going to work one day, and I was at work and I was just like beep bopping around, like doing my work. And one of the attorneys came over, and really nicely, she was like, hey, we're gonna miss the deadlines on these final pretrial statements. And she was like, this one's due today and it wasn't done. She was like, I understand that we've been busy. I understand that things have been going on. She was like, but we can't miss these. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, I'm so sorry. And she was like, yeah, she was like, if you ever need help, just let me know. I'll go ahead and take care of whatever it needs to be taken care of. And I was like, sweet, cool, thank you. So she walks away. And I'm sitting there and I start working again. And then all of a sudden I start to feel like I am no longer like adequate for the position that I'm in at the moment. So I'm like, all right. I can feel myself like getting really like upset. And I was just like, I told my coworker, I said, hey, can you give me just a minute? I'll be right back. And she was like, sure. So I left. I went out to my car. And when I got into my car, I cried for like 5 minutes. I cried. And I don't mean like, just little tears. Like I bawled. Okay. And it was at that moment that I realized that something was wrong, because this woman did not yell at me. She didn't give me attitude, nothing. She was just like, hey, if you need help, let me know. I got you. Like, I got this today, but just let me know if you're gonna be behind. And I went to my car and I cried. And at the time I was seeing a therapist, and I remember talking to her about it, and she was like, Tay, she was like, you sound like you're exhausted. And I was like, yo, I was like, I am so exhausted, because as much as I wanted to like be there for them and do this work with them, I realized that I was in a state of like, I was in a state of fight from the situation that I was in with my ex-husband. When he left, I had to assume all of the bills in my house, which was a really, really tough time, because although I had it, I had to work. I felt like I had to work doubly hard to make sure that everything was still in place. I wanted to make sure that my mortgage was on time. I wanted to make sure that all of my bills were paid. Like, I wanted to make sure that I had all of my utilities, that my cats ate. Like, I wanted to make sure that I ate. And it just felt like I was doing so much that my brain was just like, no. It was going out on me. But it's the same thing with physical burnout. And physical burnout doesn't just happen if you're just like working a physical job. You can also get physical burnout just by doing a desk job. And that's also something that I experienced. And when it comes to physical burnout, oftentimes you just don't want to move. Now, this is different from being sick, because your body feels fine. Like if you wanted, you could like, get up and go somewhere. But it just felt like moving was just too much. Like, just like with mental burnout, if you even think about a topic, and after that you're like, oof, I need to go take a nap, right? It's quite possible that you're suffering from mental burnout. Now with physical burnout, it's very similar, where you'll get up, you'll go do something, and it'll be just like normal things, and then you'll come back and you'll be like, God, I don't feel like doing anything. There was a time where I was like cleaning up my house and getting everything together, and I was like, yeah, I'm good. I'm doing all the stuff. And there are times where sometimes I'll be like, I don't even want to do the dishes. I don't even want to pick up the clothes on my floor, right? And this is different from like not wanting to fold the laundry on your bed. Like that, who does that happen to? Quite a bit of us. Also me. But it's one of those things where you feel exhausted. You feel like you need more rest more often. And it's really understanding your emotional and your physical state and understanding what it is that you need in those moments. So usually when I'm like mentally exhausted, what I will do is I will take a break. So it's interesting because around this time now, and you guys are going to start getting like more and more, you guys will definitely get content. And I will tell you, I will probably start recording them way before they're supposed to be released. And the reason is because one of the things that I like to do in the wintertime, I like to like kind of hibernate. I like to just sit, chill, relax, and rest. And I didn't realize how much I needed that end of the year rest until 2023. That was the year that I was like, oh wow, like resting actually is really good for our bodies. And we are frowned upon for that. Like people really frown upon resting because it's like we're supposed to constantly be moving, we're supposed to constantly be doing things. And when I tell you that our bodies were not made for that, that's not what our bodies were made for. So when you start to feel yourself really start to get bogged down by anything, by small tasks that you normally do, by, you know, whether it's physical or whether it's mental, whatever, that's when you might want to take a seat and just go, okay, where can I find some rest time in my life this week? All right. Now, what I will tell you is about this time, I have usually already taken a vacation, like a week-long vacation. And this year I didn't take a week-long vacation. Like last year I did, but this year I didn't. And so one of the things for me now is like now, because I didn't take that time, I'm really feeling it. I'm like, okay, I really need a vacation. And not just one of those like little weekend excursions. Like, no. I need a vacation, right? And as I'm gearing up now for my birthday and being able to take 4 days off, I'm like, okay, this is coming soon. And at the time that I'm recording this within the next couple of weeks. And honestly, I'm just so excited because I do get to rest. I get to wake up on a Thursday and not have to go to work. Now, for anybody who works and has like 3-day weekends or like takes vacations and things like that, going back to a normal work schedule after that is kind of the pits. But I will tell you, those 4 days that I have to just sit and be great are going to probably be the best thing that I have until I decide when I'm going to actually take a vacation, which, after talking to my best friend, might be next March. So we will see. Look, stay tuned. Now, when it came down to the intellectual self-care that took place in November, one of the things that I did was I started looking for new skills to like build my business. I wanted to start expanding my business knowledge and the things that I was supposed to be doing for my business and how my business was going to grow. So one of the things that I did was like I made a list of like different things that I needed to learn, like lead generation, lead magnets, things like that. I started to look into coaching courses that I had already taken and decided to go back through them so that I can start rebuilding again. And it was really one of those things where I knew that I wanted to really feed my business something good, but I knew that for myself, one, I had to get out of this burnout situation. Two, I had to stop kicking myself in the throat because of this situation from the month before. And also, I knew that what I wanted to do, like what it looked like, but I didn't know like what it actually looked like. Like I knew that I wanted to help people. I knew that it was within the realm. At this point, I realized that it was in the realm of like transformation and spirituality. But it was like, what is it that I need to learn to be able to put this out to the masses? And I think this is probably around the time that I had decided that I was probably going to do a podcast. And this was way after I like started writing out like what it was that I was, doing each month or the things that I noticed in my life and stuff like that. It was way before that. But I realized that I needed to learn different skills in order to get my podcast out there and how to, like, what I should be talking about in my podcast. And it's very interesting because even now, one of the things that I started doing was doing like a mini outline so that I could really like be a little bit more direct with the content that I'm giving to you guys when I do a podcast. And in order for me to do that, I had to like start doing an outline. What does that look like? How is this going to come across when I'm doing my, my podcast, when I'm doing my recordings? And then not only that, I had to look at what I'm going to do in getting that out. And even now, I'm still learning new skills where I took a CEO or SEO, not a CEO, an SEO certification course so that I could learn how to start pushing out my content. Now, is everybody going to try to learn new skills for their business or just because? No, not always. But for me, and the part that I had, or the focus word that I had for 2023, which was consistency, one thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to continue to build on the growth that I was already building. And in reality, when it comes down to healing, when it comes down to going on your journey and growth, that's really what it is. It's building on those skills that you already have to continue to grow. For me in 2023, it was not drinking anymore so that I can have a clearer mind and understanding of not only my emotions, but the things that are going on around me. And it was waking up early so that I could actually put effort into my business that I wasn't putting into my business before, and a way for me to really find what really makes me happy. Now, was getting up earlier going to do that? Not really, because I wasn't going to like go out and do something at 5:30 in the morning because that seems wild. But did that mean that because I woke up early and was able to do, a podcast episode, or I was able to edit my book or write a chapter of my book at this point in 2023, I was still writing a chapter of my book. Then that meant that my evenings were free for me to go do something else. And that was my chance to explore and to learn and to, if I wanted to, go build a new skill. All right. So when it comes down to this week, we're going to have you guys do a little bit of different homework this week. And what I want you to do is I want you to go back like the last year, if you can. And I want you to think about times where you were burnt out and if you did anything for that burnout. Some of you might be listening to this and being like, I am burnt out right now. All right. What I want you to do is I want you to listen to this little voice. All right. And what I want you to do is I want you to sit back and I want you to think about what are the things that you are doing that are continually burning you out. And once you find what those things are, of course, depending on what they are, I want you to either change them or stop doing them. If it has to do with work, think about the last time you took a vacation. I know a lot of people, and this is weird, as I get older, I'm finding there are a lot of people who don't take their vacation or take their PTO, which I think is outrageous. But that just might be because I'm a millennial. I don't know. But for me, I'm gonna take my vacation. All right. That is my downtime. That is a benefit given to me by my job to be able to take a break. Now, when I decide that this is going to be my full-time thing and I'm making money doing this, and who knows what my vacations are going to look like. But the cool thing is I'll be able to work on those vacations, right? So it's all about how we decide what our life looks like. But if you're doing something in your life that is causing you burnout, take a good hard look at it, decide what it is you want to do about it, and then do it. So before we go, I'm going to talk about the Trinity, of course. And the Trinity is where you brag about yourself, you say something that you're grateful for, and you talk about a desire. My desires recently have probably been the same over the last few weeks. And that's because I'm really in need of a vacation. I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that I work a lot, but I work quite a bit. And between my full-time job, between doing workshops, between doing my podcast, I work a lot. And most people might say, well, you don't really have kids, so like that's gonna be, I mean, that's cool and everything. My cats are like kids. They're ridiculous. They drive me batty. But in real life, like, I think Tay needs a vacation, y'all. So, first things first, a brag. My brag for this week is that I feel like I'm finally growing into my position as a paralegal. And that's at my current job. And not only that, but overall, I've been a paralegal for 12 years at this point. And I started by working at a collections law firm. And that's during that time is when I went to school for paralegal studies. And then right after that, I went and got a job as a paralegal. And over the years, I have really grown as like a paralegal in different fields. So when I first started as a paralegal, I was in criminal law. Then I moved to appeals at the prosecutor's office. And then I ended up in family law for a little bit. And then I went to workers' comp, and I worked in workers' comp for 3 years. And then now I'm back in family law. And I feel like over the course of the last year and a half, I've really started to grow into the position of what a paralegal is supposed to be. Now, I say that because I have worked for attorneys' offices that did not know what a paralegal was supposed to be there for. I have worked for offices where, as a paralegal, I was actually more of a legal assistant. All of these things are fine. The only thing is that does not allow me to use my brain in the way that I would normally use it. So when I got this job, they told me what my duties were going to be, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And at first, like the first 3 months or so, I was like, okay, this is a little bit more difficult than what I thought. It was very fast paced. It was a lot less stressful than workers' compensation, and that's because we had almost 700 plus cases open, whereas I moved to this law firm, we only have about 70 cases open, 70, maybe 80. The stress was still there, but it wasn't as much with the workers' compensation. There was a lot to manage. But now I really feel like I'm starting to grow into that position. Like, I'm starting to like take a little bit more charge, and I'm starting to delegate a little bit, and you know, all of these things, and it just feels really good to like be in this position. And really it makes me think about the things that I want to do as a paralegal. Like, even though I love doing my podcast and I love helping people through their transformational and spiritual growth, being a paralegal there's just something about that organization and making sure that everything is primed and ready for law, right? There's something about that I just absolutely enjoy. What I am grateful for. So I'm grateful for the ability to make my own choices. I'm gonna let that sink in for just a little bit. I am grateful for the ability to make my own choices. When it comes down to what I talked about in the month of November and how I had to really decide that my life was my own, that was a choice. I had made all the other choices up until then. I'm not going to say that I regret those choices. I think that those choices were definitely necessary for the growth that I had to do in 2023. But what I will say is that there are so many people out there who feel like they are not able to make their own choices, or they can't make their own choices for whatever reason. And I'm here to tell you that if it wasn't for my ability to make my own choices, I know that I wouldn't learn the lessons that I've learned. A lot of times when it comes to making choices, it's all about accountability and the things that you are searching for and want in that specific life. We don't specifically know what exactly our purpose is on this planet. And you can read a lot of books, and I've read a lot of books that tell you like the purpose of life is, loving other people and learning lessons that you needed to learn from your past life and all of these things. But usually, for the most part, when we go into this, we're all kind of just here, like floundering like little fish. Like, what is it that we're supposed to do? Like chickens with our heads cut off. And for me, when it comes to making my own choices, I also realize that once I make a choice, not only can I change it, but if the choice doesn't make me happy, I can move forward in a different direction. And in all honesty, like that's one of the reasons why I do this podcast. Doing this podcast allows me to sit and it allows me to talk with you guys. And I should say it basically allows me to have a one-sided conversation with myself about all of the things that I messed up during the years of my healing. But the cool thing is, at this point in my life, I'm at a point where I'm just like, yep, I'm good with the choices that I'm making. Whereas before, I used to waffle a lot. I'd be like, maybe, like back and forth, like I actually did that in October. That was like the first time in a long time that I had actually waffled between a decision. And honestly, I'm happy for the choices that I made. Like, I made the choices. I saw what I did wrong. And I saw how making that decision faster than what it needed to be almost messed things up. And again, like I told you guys last week, it definitely put me at a standstill for a little bit in my healing and in my growth. But we got past it. And we're still working on ourselves. Healing is not just a thing that you do one time and you're like, yeah, I'm good. Like, this is an everyday thing. So if you're on this journey, that just means that you're ready for this to be a constant thing. And excuse me, my nose is stuffed up. And this didn't even happen until after I started meditating. I don't blame the meditating. I actually blame the insect that's in my room. But yeah, so sorry about that. And last but not least, my desire. And this actually is very relevant at this moment. And I desire to not feel like I have to go all the time. And it's so funny because I think when I wrote these, so I write out my grateful things before I do my outline and all, like after I do my outline and all that. And I think when it comes down to like the whole burnout thing and needing a vacation and all of these things, I think that's where that desire of like not feeling like I have to go. Like, I don't want to continue to feel like I'm on a treadmill that I can't get off of, right? Or a hamster wheel. I don't like to feel that way. Because one, that is not good for my soul. That does not make me happy. But also, I think that, again, it's always nice to be able to get rest, which is what I'm going to do right after we get done recording this podcast. I'm going to go, I'm going to rest, I'm going to eat a snack. I'm just going to go be, because honestly, as I'm recording this, I have been up since 4:33 this morning with all kinds of wonderfulness just dancing around in my brain. And I just honestly just cannot, I couldn't fall back to sleep after I had this thought. So I was like, well, I'm just going to be up. So in real life, I'm exhausted. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like that means that I should be ending this podcast. So I'm so excited that you guys decided to come and join me again to listen to me ramble about a whole lot of self-care tools and really my experience as someone who's been through healing and transforming over the last year and a half. I'm so excited that you guys are here. And I hope that something I said tonight or today, this morning, whenever you decide that you're going to listen to this podcast, I hope that when you hear it, you're like, yeah, I resonate with that wholeheartedly. And if you do resonate with this, I want you to go ahead and share this with somebody because that's the way that my podcast will grow. All right. So I want you all to have a wonderful, wonderful evening. I will talk to you guys later, and I will see you guys next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to Dear Tay, You Got This. If you liked this podcast episode and found it helpful, please subscribe today and share this episode with a friend. If you have any questions, comments, wins, or would like to be featured on this podcast, please call or text 330-552-7234 or email info@desirablephoenix.com. See you next week.